Welcome to the Business Legends Podcast, where we interview business leaders and entrepreneurs so that you can learn from their successes, become inspired, and meet the people that make change happen. I'm the host of the show, Reese Ron, and Christian is not with me today. He got into a car accident, though, so he is excused. He has another excused absence on the record, but he's doing, our listeners will be glad to know he's doing okay outside of the fact that he has a little bit of airbag burn on his face, so he's even uglier than usual, but otherwise he's doing okay. Today I'm accompanied by my good friend Brooke Faw with Bespoke Sports Entertainment, and thank you for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So for our listeners, let's dig into it. What is Bespoke Sports Entertainment? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so we're a sports marketing agency. We're headquartered here in Charlotte, North Carolina, but we do things all across the country and some international things as well. So basically the gist of it is we help brands figure out how to market to their consumers using sports and entertainment. Sports, as you know, is one of the few things that people still interact with live. With Netflix and Hulu and everything, I feel like everybody watches recordings now.
Sure.
So there's very few things that people still sit down and watch together, and that few things are sports.
Yeah.
And then I also always say, no matter where you're from, no matter what your race, religion, what you believe in, everybody loves sports. And so that's what is our commonality. And so it's really fun to help brands kind of find people's passion points and then, get their message across using those passions.
Yeah, that's incredible. You have my dream job. No, I'm the world's biggest sports fan. It would never work for us, though, because Christian, my business partner, he knows nothing about sports. So I'll be telling him stuff. And, of course, we talked before the show about how I'm a big Formula One fan, an NFL fan, and he just looks at me like I have three heads whenever we start talking about it. But now, do you guys focus on any sport in particular? Do you guys have any certain niche or something like that? Or what?
Yeah, so by being headquartered in Charlotte, we do a lot with the Southern sports, right?
Okay.
So college football is huge for us.
Sure.
If you've ever heard of the Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl,
Yeah.
as most people have heard of,
Yeah.
That's probably what we're most known for.
Yeah.
But we do a ton with the SEC conference. We have
Awesome.
a lot of sponsors or partners with them. We also do a lot in NASCAR. Just
Yeah.
again being in the South, we love working with the league, with the teams, with the different drivers and things. But honestly, we do everything from all the way to bass fishing and some things that
wow.
you wouldn't normally think of,
Yeah.
then to the NFL and Formula One and kind of the more well-known sports.
That's crazy. What would you say? And I want to get back to Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you get out of that one. But what would you say is I don't want to say weirdest because but there's a lot of weird stuff out there. But
Yeah.
what would you say is the most unique or eccentric sports type of marketing that you've worked with, or maybe it's bass fishing
Yeah, and so honestly, I never realized how big of a deal talking about bass fishing. I never realized how big of a deal it was. And then the first event that we did, it was the Bassmaster Classic. So it's like the Super Bowl of bass fishing.
Okay.
And we had a client, Academy Sports and Outdoors, and they gave away buckets, that you put all your bait and your fish and whatever in. And our colleagues were lovingly called the Bucket Boys, and they were handing out. And I mean, when I say they got mobbed,
oh my God.
we gave away 5,000 buckets in less than 5 minutes, and
my God.
probably could have done it faster. It was just literally as fast as we could hand them out. And it was great branding for Academy because then everybody, the entire tournament, every time they put something in their bucket, it was an Academy bucket. So,
wow.
And then they went home and took that home, and now they own an Academy bucket. So
I wouldn't have even known that there was 5,000 people that watched that,
Yeah.
like on TV. That's
no,
that's
it's a
insane.
big deal. It really is. Yeah.
The more you know, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk this and get it out of the way. So
Yeah.
Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Yeah.
So you guys did something very interesting on that. So let's go ahead and talk to our listeners what you guys did. And if you just see me gagging over here, just know I'm doing it silently. But go ahead.
Well, so it's had iterations, right? So I'm going to go all the way back to 2020. So people forget this. But the very first, so we have the Duke's Mayo Classic, which is always at the beginning of the year, and then the Duke's Mayo Bowl that's at the end of the year. The very first Duke's Mayo Classic was supposed to be Notre Dame versus Wake Forest.
Okay.
It was supposed to be here at Bank of America Stadium. And 2020 happened, and we thought by September that we were going to be okay. we weren't. So
Like
it
worse.
went from, so we went from the game was happening at Bank of America to about a week before the game, it got moved to Wake Forest Stadium.
Okay.
And it was going to be held on campus. And then the day before the game, Notre Dame had an outbreak of COVID cases and they couldn't travel.
Wow.
And I remember we were loading up like 2,000 influencer boxes into a FedEx truck to be sent to all these influencers to get them to talk about the game because fans couldn't go to the game. And so
Right.
we wanted everybody to watch it on TV. And as the FedEx truck was pulling away is when I got the notification that the game had been canceled.
Oh my
and I was
God.
like running down Moorhead trying to chase the FedEx truck down. And then he came back and we had to unload all 2,000 of those boxes.
Oh my
so
God.
we went from that to then the very first Duke's Mayo Bowl. It was ironically Wake Forest again and Wisconsin.
Okay.
It was only 2,000 people allowed. It was just friends and family of the team. So again, we wanted people to watch it on TV. And so that's when we unveiled the Mayo cooler. So it was a Gatorade cooler that looked like a Duke's Mayo jar. We had it painted to look like a Mayo jar. And Marty Smith was our sideline reporter that game. And he did us such a solid. He was kept talking about it and is there Mayo in there and what's going to happen and whatnot. Well, what people didn't realize is the Panthers at the time had a real grass field, and their operations people were very protective of that field. And there was no way that they were going to let us pour mayonnaise out on the field. And so we did this like white Gatorade.
Okay.
Everyone lost their mind.
Yeah.
Like we got so much hate on Twitter, or X now, I guess is what it's called.
Yeah.
But like everyone was just so upset. Our only saving grace was the Duke's Mayo Bowl trophy is actually a Tiffany crystal football. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And we had told the Wisconsin team, hey, the football, like the trophy's a little broken. Like it's just a little off. We're going to go ahead and present it to you. Be careful with it. We're going to get it fixed and then we'll return it to you after the game. But we kind of got to have to work with what we have. Apparently nobody told the quarterback that, and he started dancing with the trophy, and the football fell off and smashed into a million pieces in the middle of the locker room, and someone got it on camera, and so of course it goes viral. And then the Wisconsin team actually taped a bottle of Duke's mayonnaise around the base of the trophy, and that was the new. So do you remember that like thing of like how it started, how it's going?
Yeah.
So we did the how it started, and it's this beautiful crystal trophy, and then how it's going, and it's a bottle of Duke's taped to the base.
I mean, that's
so
hysterical.
people kind of forgot that we didn't give them the Duke's Mayo dump.
Right.
And that was kind of our saving grace. And so the next year we had a conversation with the ops team. We were like, hey, we have to do this dump. Like we will get murdered if we don't. And so it was Carolina versus Carolina. It was North Carolina versus South Carolina. And we had to convince the coaches. And so to do that, we offered up $10,000 to their favorite charity if they would be willing to participate in the dump. And Mac Brown famously said, I don't really care. You can smack me with a frying pan if it means we won the game. You know? So then I think Coach Beamer was a little more not as willing. But when Mac said that, he was like, all right, I'm in too.
Yeah.
So South Carolina wins. And
this I remember. 'Cause I'm a Tar Heel fan.
Yes,
so, yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
And so I get Coach Beamer off the stage, and I'm like, hey, Coach, everything's going to be fine. I promise. This is not going to be that bad. And he's like, okay. So I'm walking him over to where we're doing the dump. We have to do it in kind of the tunnel. That was what we
Protect the field or
agreed.
whatever.
Yeah, it's what we agreed to. No, we won't do it on the field. We'll do it in the tunnel. So we didn't anticipate the amount of people that were going to gather around the tunnel. So I got Coach through, but I couldn't get through. And I was actually supposed to be the one doing the dump, myself and another colleague.
Yeah.
I literally could not get through the crowd. And so I yelled at a colleague that was already standing in there, and I was like, you do it. Unfortunately, she's a bit shorter than me. And so when we had practiced the dump, the two of us that were doing it were about the same height. And so we did it pretty seamlessly. When my colleague had to step in, she's a little bit shorter. So when we did the dump, allegedly, we might have given the poor guy a concussion. I mean, we banged
smacked his head.
No. So in addition to getting mayonnaise poured all over him, he got like half a concussion too.
I don't know what kind of life he's lived, but I can honestly tell you that might have been the worst moment of his life.
And the funniest thing was he looked directly at me and he said, "You said I was going to be okay." And I'm like, "Sir, I'm so sorry."
You almost were okay, but... And it's actually mayonnaise. It's actually mayonnaise.
So it's real mayonnaise. Yeah. Everyone thinks we add something to it. We don't. We just stir it. We stir it like crazy. Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce famously were like, "That's not real mayonnaise" on their podcast. Mm-hmm. No, like it really is real mayonnaise. We just stir the heck out of it. And if you have any questions, you can ask Coach Beamer. You can ask the Maryland coach.
Oh my God.
There's West Virginia coach. Like there's been several that have experienced the Mayo dump now. And, we knew it was going to be an exciting moment. We had no idea. I mean, even TMZ covered it. Yeah. Like, that's how viral it went. And so now, when people mention my name, I'm almost known as like the Mayo girl, which is not a bad thing. I mean, I love Duke.
Well,
so,
hey, that's good enough. And Duke's North Carolina brand too, isn't it?
Yeah. Southern brand is what we like to say. So they've got a big. They were born in Virginia, and then they've got a big plant and a lot of employees that come up right across the border in South Carolina. So they come up. But that honestly, like you ask, why would Dukes do a bowl? That's exactly it. It's because in the South, everybody knows Dukes.
Right.
But if you think about it, Wisconsin, they were like, what is Dukes? And so we actually broke the Dukes Mayo, like dukesmayo.com went down because so many people were searching it just to figure out what the heck was this mayonnaise that everybody was talking about.
Yeah.
And so that's where sports are impactful, is
that's
when your website breaks because too many people are trying to look at it.
It's
like
a good problem to have.
the brand awareness that they got that they wouldn't have had, they had in the South, but now they have across the nation was killer.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's interesting because I grew up here in North Carolina, and I grew up eating Duke's mayonnaise, of course, but I distinctly remember. And I'm not a picky eater either, but I distinctly remember my grandparents. Like if you had Miracle Whip, they'd
get out.
They would be pissed about it, like legitimately. That's what I always think of when
I always say, give me Dukes or give me death.
Yeah, right. Like it's just, I don't know. It's very interesting that's but people have their brand preferences like that, I suppose.
They do.
So let's talk a little bit about Bespoke. So how long have you guys been in business for now?
We turned 10 this year, which is crazy to say.
It is crazy. And you've been with it since the beginning?
I have, yeah.
Okay. How did you guys come about? Like, what was the background?
Yeah, so agencies are interesting, and they're set up in a structure that works for most, and it's basically, I don't know if people can see me, but like there's a pyramid, right? So the skinny part at the top are executives, and that's when a brand kind of enters the system, that's who they meet first, right?
Yep.
So if you think about it, if you're ever sold anything, like the head guy or gal walks in and they've got all of the experience and they've got all the shine to them, and you're like, oh my gosh, I love what this person is saying. And then what typically happens is, unless you're spending millions upon millions upon millions, you get kind of passed down the pyramid to the thick part at the bottom, which are the younger people. And they don't have as much experience. They don't necessarily know what they're doing. And there's a lot of turnover because as soon as they get experience, then they take their experience and they go somewhere.
Yeah, they go to the next part of the pyramid. Yeah.
And so you constantly just have this churn. And what was happening was, the creators of Bespoke, they worked at another agency previously, and they were just getting frustrated because they'd come in to sell and it'd be like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best client. And then they'd be brought back in because there was some sort of fire. And they're like, well, how did it get to this way?
Right.
Well, it got to that way because a 24-year-old is running the account. And no offense to 24-year-olds, they just aren't ready to run an account by themselves, right? They need the support. And so they kind of went through this cycle after cycle, and then they finally said, you know what, forget this. Let's turn the model basically upside down to where the thick part is at the top now, and that's the executive level. And then the thin part at the bottom is kind of the younger folks. So at Bespoke, we have young folks, but they are supported by so many folks with experience. Executive experience. And so we say that we have big brand experience, but boutique level service. So you get me, you get our CEO, you get our president working on your business on a monthly, weekly, sometimes even daily, I can sit here and talk about Dukes like I know the brand front and back, and it's because I do, because I work on it on a weekly basis. Whereas at larger agencies, the way the budget is for Dukes, like it wouldn't scratch the surface at a larger agency.
Right.
And so we have found this niche of being able to help brands, we like to say, punch above their weight. And that's
sports reference. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, that's what we do as an agency. We're on the smaller side. We have about 30 people now, but we act like we've got 100 because we just work hard and grind. But that was kind of the impetus of why to start an agency in what is already a crowded agency market, is to kind of do it better and just different. It doesn't work for every brand, but the brands that it does work for, we're like
it really
family.
Works for,
It really works for, and it also really works for employees. So there are a lot of people that are looking for a place where they're more than just a number. They're more than just the kid that goes and gets coffee for the first 2 years until someone actually lets them sit in on a meeting. Like when you start with us, even down to the interns, you're in every meeting, you're in every pitch, you're having conversations, business financials. Like it's almost like a business 101 on top of doing your marketing job. And I think that that's honestly, like people ask me how I've grown so fast. That's how, is because it's just like throw it in and figure it out. And we're led by two of the best in the business. And I call them the kids. I tell the kids all the time, like how lucky they are that the CEO knows their name and knows like what they like for their lunch order and like goes and gets them coffee. It's a totally different culture than most, but that's why I love it.
That's really cool. You said a lot of really cool stuff there. The more I learn about businesses and working with businesses and meeting business professionals and things like that, I think that a lot of companies really, and you're right, flipping the pyramid, it doesn't work for every company or every situation. But one thing that I will definitely say is that I think a lot of companies make this mistake where they get in, a new intern or a new employee, or it doesn't matter, or less experienced individual. It doesn't matter what the situation is, but they exclude them from the ongoings of the business, and they don't welcome. I mean, I'll never forget. I was sitting in a boardroom where we were about to review financial data, right? And they had a couple of executive assistants in there, and they made the executive assistants leave because they didn't want them to know how many millions of dollars they were gaining and losing and whatever else type of thing. As a consequence, all those executive assistants ended up going and getting another job because they didn't feel valued.
That's it.
And it's one of those things where it's like, look, we're all adults, and I think there's this natural fear of like, if I tell you that we've profited $5 million this quarter or whatever, that the fear is that as an executive assistant, an entry-level position might be like, hey, I think I'm due for a raise. You guys profited $5 million or whatever. But if you set up those expectations to begin with, I think it's a huge mistake, basically.
That's where it's all about transparency. And I think that that's probably the biggest thing I've learned at Bespoke. So talking about finances, everyone from the intern all the way to the CEO knows exactly where we are, knows exactly where every single client is, what their goal to get to is, what our goal as a company is, and knows the bonus structure of when we hit this goal, then everyone in the company gets this. And if you help us in an additional way, like bringing in a new client or something like that, then there's an additional compensation or bonus structure for that. And it's known throughout. So there are no secrets. There are no, I wonder how we're doing this quarter. But I think, so we have a lot of people that have, they had their first job with us and then they've just stayed with us. And I don't think that they realize how rare in the world that is, right?
Yeah, that culture.
That's it. Like there are so many companies that you have no idea what, and especially as you get larger, like there's a million people that work for the bank. They have no idea if the bank's doing well or not. They just assume and
that's what,
go along the day. Yeah.
So funny. When I was in grad school from 2012 to 14 and getting my MBA here in Charlotte, and a lot of people in the program came from the banks. So they came from Wells Fargo and it may have been Wachovia at that time, but Bank of America, tons, all that stuff. But BB&T, and it was funny because most of the people that I met from the banking structure, they and I think it's gotten better. I think the culture's gotten better since then because this is over 10 years ago. But they would introduce me and say, "Hey, I'm Reese Arlen. I'm the VP of blah 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 at the bank." And I was
Everybody's a VP.
And I was like, "Yeah, you are because there's 40 million VPs that work at the bank. Like everybody's a VP of something."
Yeah.
But it's like this. I think that there was a lot of self-importance that was placed on these titles and stuff, and I think that the wool is slowly getting pulled away from people's eyes, and they realize things for what they are. If that makes sense.
Talking about titles, I think that's probably the other really big thing that I've learned at Bespoke. I mean, when we started, it was 3 of us, and I'm pretty sure I didn't even have a title. It was just like, get it done, you know?
I'm the Brooke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And then as we grew, we gave people titles, and it's so interesting, especially people younger than me, how much they care about what their title is. And I've told everyone, like, stop caring. Like, it's just a name, and I care more about what kind of work you're doing, whether you're a coordinator, an executive, a manager, a director, like what, I can't even tell you all the names of the titles. And honestly, I think it probably frustrates our people sometimes because I don't know what people's titles are. Like I'll like yell if I'm putting it in a deck. I'm like, hey, like, remind me what your title is. And they kind of give me this look like, you should know what my title is. I have no idea because I don't treat them any differently if they have a higher title than another person. And so I just, how people say I don't see titles. I just don't. And I think the more that younger people can stop worrying so much about their title and start worrying about what they actually get to do. Because if your title is intern, but you get to sit in on meetings, who cares?
Yeah. And you're gonna grow beyond
That's
your
it.
volume.
And
too.
to your point, if your title is, executive assistant, which is a decent title, but you get kicked out of the meeting, like, I'm finding something else.
Yeah.
So forget about your title and start caring about what you actually get to do.
Yeah. No, that's sound advice for sure. Now, was it always sports for you? Like, did you ever think about venturing into other industries or other climates or anything like that, or was it just always sports?
We are in the business of helping people. And so, for example, like Academy, they do these store openings where they go and open a new store in a new market. It doesn't necessarily have to do with sports. Now, what we do is we bring our athletes in that market to, help drive people coming to it and whatnot. But we actually help them with their entire grand opening from, and I would say like 80% of it has nothing to do with sports. So now, is that something that we're going to go do just for like insert brand here? Probably not, because there are other groups that do that.
Sure.
But I think because we know them so well, and again, like when we talk about like we're now part of their family, right? Like we know their business really well. And so we can open a store like we're them and just be an integral part of their team. So we'll do things for people that we're already involved with that maybe don't necessarily have to do with sports, but honestly, like 90% of what we do is sports or entertainment.
Yeah, it's interesting. The more people you meet, some people believe that riches are in the niches, and some people believe in kind of shooting for the stars and seeing where you land type of thing. And I don't think there's any right answer. I think that with your skill set and your approach, your I call it reverse pyramid.
Yeah.
But, I think with all those things, that's why I was asking, because I think that you guys could affect different markets that way if you chose. But once again, it's like if you stick with what you're good at, you're going to get really, really good at it. So it's a hodgepodge mix match for it and stuff. So let's talk a little bit about technology and innovations. So of course, you guys just turned 10, so I'm sure that you guys are utilizing way different tools than you did 10 years ago. What types of things have you integrated into your business, and how has it affected it?
Yeah, so we have a whole team that is basically, they're called the strategy team, and data and analytics is their forte. I always smile at them like I know enough to be dangerous, but then I bring them in because they sound way smarter than I do.
And they just are dangerous.
Yes, exactly. But what I do know is it actually has been mind-blowing to me because, the saying of like Big Brother is always watching. Like we have gotten to the point now where if I tell my data team, I'm a brand and I want to hit men 18 to 24 who live in the Southeast, just those few things, they can tell me what they watch, what they listen to, what, like, down to like the amount of time they spend, literally, like, they can describe who you are as a person without ever meeting you. Yeah. And it kind of freaks me out a little bit.
It is freaky.
But it also is amazing because then we can use that to really get pinpointed to where, if I say, so that demo that I just named, obviously college football, right? They live in the South, they're a guy, and they're young. College football's their thing.
Yep.
Okay, but then how do we help you get into college football? And what do we do? And so then they can go down and say, well, they really love these 3 teams. And so we should, or they love this conference, or, and so it gets down to the player, and so they can really help a brand, depending on their budget, go as big or as small as they want. But then they turn around and they measure it, right? So then they have all of the tools also to follow, like, we have Advent Health is one of our clients, and they have the Advent Health 400 coming up, not this weekend, but next in Kansas. And we can run a social media tool that basically tracks every single person that talks about Advent Health or the Advent Health 400 for that time frame. And then we can go back to Advent Health and say, because you did the entitlement of this race, this is how much you were talked about. This is the brand lift you got. This is the brand recognition you received. And that means something to that brand. And honestly, it equates to dollars.
Absolutely.
And so before, people were like, oh, you do sports, like, that must be so cool. And I'm like, yes, but it's also really impactful. And so when you can tell that story, now brands, we're seeing taking money out of their just typical advertising budget, just commercial here, commercial there. Let's take that. Let's do commercials during this game, but then let's also have a player in the game. Let's also have some branding in the game. Let's do a full integrated package, and you get way more bang for your buck than just kind of shooting and trying to hit the masses.
Yeah, I think that in marketing, attribution it's very important, but it's very difficult to measure sometimes. Like, for instance, you look at Bank of America Stadium or something like that. Like, it's funny because I sit here and I think about it, and I think about this a lot, maybe because I'm in the marketing profession. But some of the key sponsors for Bank of America Stadium, Coca-Cola is one, Atrium Health is one. I mean, as far as like the beers are concerned, Bud Light was the official Panthers beer. I don't know if it still is. I think it's switched to Miller Lite now. But anyways, I think about all that stuff, and I know that, and I find myself, if I reach for a soda, it's usually like a Coca-Cola type of thing, And so there's this almost like an indirect attribution thing to it, because they're supporting the things that you love and the things that you things that you root for and your passions and things like this.
Listen, there's no better example than my 11-year-old son who went to someone's house and went to go get mayonnaise out of their fridge, and he was like, this isn't Duke's, I can't use it. My mom, so it went down to him too. And the other thing is, people, have their opinions on NASCAR. Listen, in my opinion, there is no more devoted fan than a NASCAR fan.
Oh, for sure.
To the point where if their driver's a Coca-Cola, you better not bring a Pepsi around them, or the reverse, And the other really fun thing that happened was one of the college reporters after a football game said something to one of the coaches about, like, how did you enjoy that Gatorade bath? And he looked at her and goes, it was Powerade. We're a Coca-Cola school. And I'm that's a coach that gets it,
That's a coach that gets marketing.
So, and Coke sent him a ton of stuff saying, like, thank you, like, you get it.
Yep.
So again, sports is such a powerful way to then get whatever it is you want to get across. That's why I love doing it so much.
Yeah. When I was another grad school story here for you, but when I was in grad school, I heard this story. It's a true story. There was a multi-million-dollar deal to be had, and it was with Coca-Cola. And I can't remember which one it is. I think Dasani is Coca-Cola,
Coke.
And then Aquafina is Pepsi. Is that correct? Okay. So that's what it was. So it's Coca-Cola, Dasani, Aquafina, right? So anyway, they get to this presentation. Hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of hours go into this pitch, this proposal for them, the deck, everything like that. They sit down with some high executive at Coca-Cola or something like that, and what do they have in front of them but Aquafina? sits down, looks at the bottle, says, "Can't do business with you. Didn't do your homework. Bye."
Yep.
And it literally cost them millions of dollars.
Yep.
But I mean, that was a very, very important lesson to learn. Is that I mean, brand solidarity is a very real thing, and it's like, maybe you don't even, and people can be quite understanding of that at times. But it's like, if you're sitting trying to pitch me millions of dollars worth of stuff, and you make that mistake, I mean, it says all the wrong things or the right things in the sense of it's time to walk away.
That's right.
But I don't know. I've always thought about that, like the brand fans and brand recognition and stuff like that. Okay, so here's a fun question for you. You've worked with all sorts of different sports, everything from bass fishing, of course, NASCAR, probably golf. You've done some golf stuff as well. Yeah, golf, football. I'm sure you've done. We've talked about basketball beyond the fact. What sport do you think creates the biggest brand lift, and why? And what I mean by brand lift for our listeners is to say that, let's say that I'm a Coca-Cola person or something like that, and then my favorite driver or NFL athlete or golfer or whatever is a Pepsi person. It may transition my own brand. What would you call fanhood or my own brand choice or something like that. So what sport in your experience do you think changes it like that?
So it depends on the brand, right? I mean, and so that's where you go, like, if you're, depending on who you're trying to reach, the answer is going to be different.
Of course.
Holistically, what I will say is I've never seen a passion like college football.
Okay.
Like, people just...
Makes sense.
I mean, the most diehards of diehards, and but from a ability to host and just access and like just really give people cool experiences. And so if it's like you're going to bring somebody to an event and try and then have them love your brand or have them love your business. So I guess this is more of like a B2B kind of answer. Honestly, NASCAR. Like, NASCAR allows access that no other sport allows. Like, I was hosting guests last weekend, and we're sitting on top of the pit box literally as the crew chief is making a call that's either going to win or not win the race. And my voice is a little raspy because we actually won, and I was screaming my head off. But it would be like standing next to the coach as he's calling in the winning play.
Right.
That just doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen with any other sport. Yeah.
And NASCAR understands more than any other sport how truly important the brands are to their sport. Like, they literally do not go round without brand sponsorship. And so, they allow their brands to bring people into places that, like, sometimes I'm even uncomfortable. I'm like, we should not be here. And everyone's like, no, come on in. So if the question is around like who's the most welcoming to be able to just do whatever it takes,
accessibility, it's NASCAR.
It really is NASCAR. But from and there's a true passion there with their fans that is unmatched. But from a mass standpoint of, like, where's just the passionate brand that if you associate yourself with like Alabama football, like there are people that literally have tattoos that are, they got when they were younger than they weren't allowed to even get a tattoo, and they got a tattoo,
and they were
so
for their tattoos,
yes, right, exactly. Yeah. So, but again, depending on the brand, there's a niche for everybody. That's true. The beautiful thing about sports is, like, no matter what you're trying to do, there's something for those folks. The other thing that I'll say is, women's sports is having such a moment right now.
Absolutely.
And as a former female athlete, I'm here for it. I've been here for it. It's about time.
I agree wholeheartedly.
But everybody keeps saying, like, yeah, they're having their moment. No, we're here to stay. You probably should have been here 10 years ago because you would have looked smart. But if you're still waiting 10 years later, you're going to look stupid. And so I think the sport that has the most upside to get in now is across the board women's sports, from basketball, which is everything that we've been seeing.
I was going to say WNBA. That's a specific example. But
all the way to like the world's the person who raked in the most NIL deals, female gymnast. She
I can see that.
killed it. And I think like the top 10 out of the top 10 NIL deals, like 7 or 8 of them were women,
Wow.
like it just, because they have such a reach, and they have a following, and they actually care about the brands and aren't just putting like hashtag ad, and like they're really diving in and being passionate about it. So every brand that I talk to, if they're at all interested, or if that's all they're like where they're trying to reach in the marketplace, that's 100% where I would push them.
Yeah, no, that's well said. The research of marketing also shows that, you know, when you have a what I would call it a new audience or a segmented audience, because women's sports wasn't as popular 10 years ago, for instance, you know. But for instance, like, you know, we were talking about Caitlin Clark before the show, and boy, is she not just the most. I mean, she's inarguably the greatest female college basketball player of all time. She's arguably the greatest college basketball player of all time, but she's also arguably the greatest athlete of all time for college. Like,
you won't get an argument from me.
I mean, the stuff she's doing is just out of this universe, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, getting very specific here, but I think that they definitely made some mistakes in the finals. South Carolina was so dominant. I mean, they just had so much depth and everything. But, I mean, God, she really elevated that team. And just the records she's breaking and the stuff she's doing is just out of this universe. And it's so exciting to watch.
What I appreciated about Dawn Staley is when she got up on the stage to accept the trophy, she specifically shouted out Caitlin Clark, and she said, "You have grown our game, and, you know, thank you for making it beyond the big stage." The other thing that was mind-blowing to me, so we just had the WNBA draft. She got drafted by the Indiana Fever. I'm from Indiana, so I'm very excited about this. Yeah, yes. But the previous record was held by Trevor Lawrence for draft day jersey sales. She blew it out of the water. So when you talk about, like, yes, from a female perspective, she's amazing. From an overall, like, it's Trevor Lawrence doesn't hold the record anymore. She does.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know, Kobe was the first one that I saw really start talking about the women's game, start supporting the women's game. He wore the orange hoodie. He brought his daughter, God rest their souls, to the games, and everyone started noticing, like, well, if Kobe's interested, maybe I should be interested. So that was like the start of it. And honestly, that's why, I mean, obviously I was devastated. He was a childhood idol of mine. So it's sad when anybody passes away, but I was overly devastated.
Yep.
And it was because I saw that because of his daughter and how good she was. You want to talk about Caitlin Clark's skill? Gianna, had she, you know, survived, that girl, I swear she was going to be the first woman in the NBA. Like,
really?
She was really that good.
That's
and
insane. And
Kobe saw her skill and saw the need to amplify her platform. And man, I wish that would have happened.
We all do. I mean, it's just an absolutely heartbreaking thing. And you know, I think that that whenever something horrible happens like that, there can be some good things that come as a consequence of that. And so I think that not only has Kobe gotten even more recognition post-mortem, but you have, the, like you said, the awareness of women's athletics. But, you know, another thing that I've seen since Kobe's passing particularly is you have these athletes that have come out of the woodwork. I mean, you have Shaq. You know, Shaq's been in tears multiple times talking about how he wished he would have been a better friend and done better. And you know, one of Kobe's quotes, he says, "If Shaq would just hit the gym, then I would have two fistfuls of rings."
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, you think about that, and then I just watched what's his name, Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson wrote a letter to Kobe, and he was talking about, you know, the mentality of being better, basically, you know. And I don't know, it's a very exciting time for sports, and I think now more than ever, you know, our country's going through a lot of things, and we have crazy world affairs going on and stuff like that. But sports is something that just brings us together. You know?
That's so true. I'm grateful for his allyship, and I'm grateful for the players that have continued it since. And I think the biggest example, when Caitlin got drafted, the Colts put something out saying, "Welcome to Indy." The Pacers put something out. I saw where the Cubs put something out for the the girls that got Camilla and who got drafted up in Chicago. Like it. I want to say
you
it
didn't
was
see
like,
that 5 years ago.
Yeah, Sarah Spain, I think, was the one that said it. She was like, if you would have told me that, I would have looked at my timeline and everyone, men and women, would have been talking about the WNBA draft and congratulating people. Like 5 years ago, I'd have told you were crazy. So we all have been like, hey, where have y'all been?
Right.
But it honestly brings me to tears to think about, like, we finally made it. And now the next step is making it to where this is just a normal conversation. And we aren't talking about how great it is, because it's just, this is what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a very exciting time for sports. You know, the other thing I was sitting here thinking about was, you know, other athletes that have kind of started to propagate this forward too. And I'm a big Tom Brady fan, always have been, always will be, even though I'm a Panthers fan, so it hurts. But anyways, you know, Tom Brady says that the best athlete in the family is his niece, who's a softball player, you know? And so, you know, like I've seen where he's given her shout outs on his social medias and stuff like that. But, I mean, it's definitely coming, you know?
The 3-point competition between Sabrina and Steph. I mean, Steph barely won, and he's
Yeah.
Steph Curry, you know.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
and he gave Sabrina her flowers, and then he, you know, is in the family with Cameron. Her Steph's parents are her godparents, and so he's given her shout outs. He's coming to her games. Like, that's what we need. Women, we've been here. We've always supported other women, but we need men to be allies and to finally realize that, like, oh, this is a game too, and this is actually great product on the floor, sometimes better, to be honest with you. And talking about Shaq, so he's got an amazing daughter who is going and getting ready to play. She was in high school. She's getting ready to go to college, and he infamously said, like, man, I could name whole rosters on the women's side of things. He's like, I can't tell you who's going into the draft on the men's side of things. Like, I just don't know their names. And so it doesn't have to be either or. It can be and.
Right.
And so I think we're getting to the place where we love the men's game and the women's game. And they can be different, but we can love them both.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I treat it. I treat it exactly that way. I mean, it's a different game completely. You know, I mean, for instance, softball and baseball, right? I mean, softball is a different sport than baseball. It's just a different sport. You know, you have similarities, sure, but yeah, it's an exciting time. It's a very exciting time for sports and for, you know, solidarity and community with these things. So I just can't wait to see all of that. And you know, one of my favorite college athletes of all time, and it just pains me to say this, but Zion Williamson for Duke, and I'm a Chapel Hill fan, which is insane of me to say that, but he was just so dominant. Like he was, you know, he was so good. And then, you know, that year I looked at him, just extraordinary player, you know, and then he doesn't even hold a candle to the top 3 women's basketball players, you know, Caitlin Angel and why do I keep forgetting her name?
Camilla.
Camilla. Why do I keep? That's like the 4th time today I've forgotten that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I always stop after, and I know what it is. I think because my name's Reese, Angel Reese, and so I always stop there, and that's where it always goes. Did Angel go draft, by the way?
She did.
Where
She got drafted by Chicago.
Chicago. That's right. Okay.
She
okay.
and Camilla did. So now they're teammates. Yeah.
Which
is
how
insane.
did that happen? It was just the way the draft
I
worked out.
I saw a meme that was like, I'm about to love these two fan bases coming together, because you know they hate each other so much, especially on the women's side. And, there's that huge rivalry, and then for them now to be like, and Camilla famously said, she's like, well, nobody's gonna get a rebound on us, you know, because with the 2 of them down there, are you kidding me?
Oh my God, they're gonna score 800 points a game. Like they get. I mean, she got in the. If I'm not mistaken, we're gonna have to look this up after the show, but in the Camilla, I think she got 15 rebounds in the finals. But I mean, just insanity. Like, I mean, that was why South Carolina won it, is because they just absolutely crushed them on offensive rebounds.
Yep, I agree.
So, you know, it is what it is. But anyway, well, we're finally out of time here for the show. Man, what a great! You got my blood pressure going talking about sports. We didn't even talk about Formula One. Thankfully, we'll only be here for another hour, so I get started on that. But I always try to sign off here with a fun question. So other than Duke, well, we can't pick your favorite brand.
Yeah,
because that would be incriminating, I guess. But do you have, so the Duke's Mayo dump obviously is like the top, coolest / most disgusting thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like just, and I like mayonnaise, but it's just it just makes me sick. But what would you say, do you have an example of another just out of the box crazy marketing idea that you have for representation? Okay, all right, shoot.
So one of the first things we did as an agency, oh my gosh, this is just crazy to say it. So Fox Sports was our client, and FS1 was launching. So if you can believe it, like FS1 didn't always exist, So this was 10 years ago.
I was about to say, about 10 years ago. Yeah.
And they were coming out as a network, and they were going to have major college football games on their network, but nobody knew how to find them. And so we needed to do this big ad campaign or big brand campaign of find college football on FS1. And so the very first game that they had was Michigan versus Utah, and it was going to be played out in Utah. That game was Harbaugh's first game as the Michigan head coach. So the return of the Messiah, right?
Yeah.
And everyone was talking about Harbaugh.
Yeah.
So we came up with this idea, and it's still crazy to say this, but we created a bus, and we called it the Harb Bus, and we made it look like Harbaugh. And when I say made it look like actual khaki pants, like real khaki fabric, leather belt, he has this very infamous look every single game. He looks the same every single game. So that look,
you did not do this,
on a bus. And then we went and found 5 college kids from Michigan that looked like Harbaugh, and we called them the Harb Bros, and we dressed them in the exact same outfit every single day.
Oh my God.
And put them, so the Harb Bros rode the Harb Bus around the country, and we had a blogger, and we had, you remember the Fox Sports robot, the guy that you see?
Yeah.
So he actually exists. It's a model from LA that puts on the robot suit.
Yeah.
So a model from LA, a blogger from California, 5 kids, the Harb Bros from Michigan, and me. Got on a bus, and for 14 days we went around the country, and every morning we did a morning broadcast from the Fox affiliate. So we were on Fox and Friends in Times Square, which was super cool.
That sounds awesome.
And then every afternoon we would do some sort of celebrity appearance with either a Michigan player, former Michigan player, or a Utah player.
Okay.
So Jordan Gross, Steve Smith, Derek Jeter, obviously from the Michigan side, Jamal Anderson, when we went down to Atlanta, did the Dirty Bird with him, all the things, Utah. So, and then every night we went to a baseball game because Fox had baseball playing, and then they were using that to promote the coming of college football on FS1.
So first it was 14 long days for sure.
Very long days.
Yeah,
and then we lived on the bus. So bunks, and then they would drive at night because we would have to go and we'd have to be quick to get to our next thing.
Wow.
So we did have hotels to take showers and stuff in, but there were multiple trips where we just slept on the bunks.
Wow.
So the best part of this story is we get out to Utah. Understandably, they are incredibly frustrated because they had a really great team that year, and no one's talking about them. Right. Everyone's talking about Michigan. And so Fox had gotten word that the athletic director was not going to allow us on campus.
Wow.
You're not coming anywhere near this game. And he had the right to do so. So
did he though? I mean,
that's so we get to campus, and we let the bus go because obviously that's the biggest thing, right? So we let it go. And I had an extra earpiece. I always have an earpiece in my bag in case I need to plug it into a radio or something. Mm-hmm. So I had an earpiece, threw that in, had a clipboard, had my FS1 polo on. The boys obviously are famous by now because everyone's been seeing them all over Twitter and Instagram and things throughout the week. And I just go down to the gate and I tell the guard, I'm like, hey, I'm with FS1. These are the Harb Bros. We're supposed to be on the field doing the interviews with the Fox team that's on the field. We need to get down there and get down there now. And I had my earpiece in, and he was like, yes, ma'am. Did not have a pass, did not have a thing.
Wow.
We get down on the field. There's Matt Leinart and the rest of the crew. They come over and start talking to the boys. So it looks legit, that we're down there. And so I'm like, okay, everybody just act cool. and just kind of stay out of the fray, right?
Right.
So we're down there and we're in the end zone, and the teams are warming up, and the camera is on Utah warming up. Well, while that's happening, Sarah Harbaugh, who's Jim's wife, had come out and she sees the Harbros, and she comes over and she's like, "Oh my God, I have seen you guys all over social media. This is hilarious. Like, my entire family group chat is like talking about you guys. Can I get my picture with you?"
Yes, you can.
Of course, the boys are like dying, right?
Yeah.
So I take her camera. I'm taking the picture. Right as I like click to take the picture, I hear very, very famous voice right behind me. And we turn around and it's Coach Harbaugh.
Right.
And he comes over and he shakes all the boys' hands.
Yeah.
Well, the camera realizes that Harbaugh is meeting the Harbros,
Right.
and immediately moves from Utah warming up to this interaction happening.
Yep.
I'm in the background like crying because
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
And I'm taking pictures and doing all the things. So everyone sees me and they see the Harbros. The Harbros are crying. Like
Yeah.
they've just met their idol.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
And Jim's just eating it up. He thinks it's hilarious.
Yep.
And he's like, "All right, nice to meet you." He goes about his way. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the athletic director. He's not going around the field. He is going straight through the field.
Yep.
And he's like, "Out." And I'm like, "Yes, sir." Meanwhile,
what you
I'm
needed.
getting a text from my boss like, "How in the hell?
Did you
You
get that
shouldn't
done?"
even be on campus, never
Yeah.
mind on the field. Like,
Right.
what are you doing?"
Yep.
And I'm like, "Don't worry about it."
We got it figured out. You know, there's a great business lesson in all of this, though, is that fortune favors the bold. You know, because if you wouldn't have
Just
if
act
you
like
wouldn't-
you're supposed to be there, and
act
you're
like
supposed to be there.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Well, it has been a great episode. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your stories with everything.
Yeah.
But let's go grab some lunch and
Let's do it.
talk about more sports.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.